Well, everybody, welcome to Friday. Today we have Alex Hillkurtz with us. Alex is right now in Paris. Alex is a brand ambassador. It's a pleasure to have him here. Hello, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It's good to be here. Hello,
Awesome.
everyone.
It's awesome to have you. And so we're going to see, I think we're going to see a slide presentation first.
Yes.
Okay. And then Alex is going to do a demo. Can we ask you questions as you're painting, Alex, or you want them at the end?
No, absolutely. Shout out questions or however we want to do it. I'm happy to, I can talk and shoot them at the same time.
Awesome. So if you're on Zoom, you can ask questions directly. If you're on Facebook, I or Anna, Gabriel, Johnny will go ahead and read the question to Alex. Okay.
All right.
So Alex, can you go ahead?
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Can you all see this now on screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is Alex's Facebook account. Make sure that you follow his page and also make sure to follow his Instagram account. The next couple of slides will be Alex's artworks and he will take us through. Alex?
Yes. This is, I live in Paris. I grew up in California, but I live in Paris. And this is a very, I live in Paris. Oh, I hear my own voice. My apartment is on the top floor, and so I can look down at these great sort of high angle views of different cafes on the corners. And this is actually one of the views from my apartment. I fell in love with these cafes, the red awnings. I'll be painting something similar today.
That's beautiful.
This is a detail, architectural detail. It's early morning light. I just, growing up in California, being here in Paris, every block, every corner has something that's so intricate and so detailed, and the way the light kind of strikes this and creates all these really interesting shadows is endlessly fascinating to me. So I had to do this one, and this is a big one. I think this is a full sheet. So if you've seen it in person, it's a nice size. This is a fountain that, again, it's not far from where I live. It's this pretty classic fountain in front of Saint-Sulpice Cathedral, if you know Paris at all, in the 6th arrondissement. I took this as a reference photo in the winter. That's why it looks so cold. And I did the painting in my studio. But I love, it's got this fountain kind of has these sheets of water that just glide off of this surface, and they reflect the sky. And I did another version of this, a slightly different angle that reflects kind of a sunset light. It has a totally different feel. But it's, I don't do a lot of water, but this was a real fun challenge for me.
Very nice.
And again, sort of a classic, these long shadows that you get either late summer or kind of midwinter light when the sun is really low. And I just love the way it just creates these incredible shadows. And I was really playing with the texture. The subject of this is fairly simple, but I love the texture of these sidewalks. So I was playing with the granulation of the paint, but also kind of splattering different colors and doing some dry brush, some wet on wet, just kind of playing with different techniques. And this is a more recent piece. Again, it's this classic Parisian architecture with sort of a bright red awning cafe. But I also sort of love to mess it up a little bit. There's clearly a center of focus, but I like to have pieces that have a little bit of mystery to them. There's a lot to look at, but when you get right up to it, the details are pretty loose. But I love these, you know, it's a fairly limited palette. There's not a lot of variety of colors, but you know, you can really do a lot with them. This one I actually used ink as well. I do that quite a bit because I sort of come from a sketching background. So I'll use a fountain pen with different kinds of inks, and I find those play really well with watercolor.
Is this one also based off of the French flag?
You know, unintentionally, I did a painting probably a couple years ago, and it was kind of in a landscape format, but it was a city scene. And after I was done, I went, oh my God, it's blue, white, and red. It's the French flag. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's unconscious or semi-conscious, but yeah, the colors of Paris to me are the colors of the flag. It just, not only the sky, but even the rooftops, not so much in this piece, but the rooftops are kind of a gray blue. The buildings are very pale. And then I love these pops of red. So it just naturally becomes the French flag, which I sort of love. So yeah, the city is the nation, I guess. Another sort of classic cafe. This is early morning light. I love early morning and late afternoon light. When the sun is low, it kind of rakes across these intersections, these awnings. It catches pieces of motorcycles and scooters. And I don't know, there's just a lot of, for me, I love all this variety. Again, there's not a ton of different colors going on, but I feel that I can get a lot of depth and a lot of texture to create something that's pretty interesting. And again, this one's kind of big as well. This is probably a full sheet. This is in Luxembourg Gardens. This is actually the Senate building. And this is a favorite subject of mine when I'm giving workshops here in Paris. I talk about perspective, and this building is the perfect model for me because it's sort of 3 cubes and everything's symmetrical and the same size, and you can walk all around it so you can see it at different angles. And there's plenty of space for a large group to kind of sit comfortably in the shade. I've painted this view quite a few times. Every time it's slightly different. But again, it's the warm sunlight contrasted with the cool shadows is something that I'm sort of endlessly fascinated with and kind of play with quite a bit. And here's a rare use of green for me.
Those were beautiful.
The end. All right.
Okay. So if you have questions for Alex, just please here on Zoom ask directly. What Rick asked the question is, do you use permanent inks?
Yes, I use a couple different types of ink. If I'm using ink in a fountain pen, I'll use Noodler's ink and Dietromentis document ink, both black inks that are waterproof and permanent. I also use some ink by Diamine, which is water soluble, and you can get some really interesting effects with that. So I kind of mix it up a little bit depending on what I want to do. If I want some really defined details, I'll use waterproof or a very narrow brush with paint, or I'll play with water soluble inks.
Awesome. Okay.
May I ask a question about some of the images you showed?
Yeah.
With the fountain, can you talk about what color you used for the sky? It's cool and very subtle and nuanced.
Yes, and I'm trying to remember because a lot of my skies are straight up cobalt. That's just, it feels like that is exactly the color of Parisian skies. That one was winter and it was a little bit overcast. And so I think I was playing with cerulean blue chromium and Indian red. I think I was mixing those two to get this cool gray. that had some nice granulation. So you kind of feel these stormy clouds. I think that's what I was doing with that one. Yeah.
Alex, it's Karen from beautiful downtown Niagara-on-the-Lake, Canada.
Hello.
And it's our Canada Day today, so happy Canada Day to every Canadian. Are you coming out with another book?
Good question. Yes, but I don't know when. I had a book published about a year and a half ago on sort of sketching techniques, and I cover, oh, somebody's holding it up. Johnny, thank you so much. I worked with a publisher out of Boston, and that covers a lot of ground, sort of a lot of sketching, there's figure drawing. I talk about perspective, and I do talk about watercolor, sort of my approach to painting architecture. I am sort of developing a second book that's probably a little bit more watercolor centric, and kind of tied in with my experience of living in Paris. So don't hold your breath on that, but you know, when I'm closer and when I'm ready to announce, I'll be annoying and let everyone know.
Awesome. So how long have you been an artist, Alex?
You know, I've drawn my whole life. My mother was a really good artist. She did sort of very detailed pen and ink sketches. So I inherited some talent and some interest from her. As long as I can remember, I've been drawing spaceships and dragons and whatever kids draw. But I fell in love with film at an early age, and I went to film school, and I had a whole career as a storyboard artist and an illustrator for film. So that's my background. I come to watercolor a little late, but I feel like these things kind of play off each other really, really well. So I've probably been an artist my whole life. That's been my career. That's how I've made my living. It's interesting, being a storyboard artist and being a watercolor artist are incredibly different. It's a very different feeling. It's a very different sort of part of your brain. So I feel like what I do now has a lot more emotion to it, a lot more feeling to it. Not that my illustration didn't, but it sort of needed to be a little bit more technical and kind of be a part of a larger industry. And my painting is something that I wanted to kind of swing exactly the opposite way and not have anyone tell me what to do, and nobody's giving me revisions. And I'm sort of free to choose my subject and to take as long as I want or as little time as I want to do things. So it's a much more personal pursuit, but they definitely kind of feed off each other.
Awesome.
John, I think we have one guest, Keisha raised her hand. Please proceed, Keisha, with your question. You're on mute.
No, it's okay. First of all, greetings, a lot of greetings from Poland. I have opportunity to thank you to Alex for your last book. Thank you so much, and for your help for my workshop. And I have what kind of colors do you use to buildings? To French Paris building, because I mostly use ochre or burn sienna, but I'm absolutely crazy about Italians architecture. So I'm very interested in which colors do you use?
Well, this is probably a good segue into me starting this demo. Because I'll be doing a piece that's kind of a Parisian building. The short answer is raw sienna.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my go-to color for sort of a base of the pale sandstone look of a lot of Parisian buildings, especially if they're in sunlight. It's a warm color, but I really water it down quite a bit, so there's not a lot of pigment there. It's very, very faint. I don't want to be overpowering, especially with the sunlight colors. But that's the raw sienna is what I reach for the most. Should I kind of dive in?
Sure.
Okay.
While you're getting set up there, Alex, we had one question on Facebook and they wanted to know what kind of paper do you like to paint on?
I like tonight or today I'm using Arches. I'm using this 300 gram. I like the rough tooth. I also like Canson Heritage paper, again 300 gram. 100% cotton, but this is Arches or Arche. I just want to tape this before I get going.
Have you ever used hot press paper?
Only very rarely. I really like the texture of paper. This again, it sort of came out of my background as a storyboard artist because I would draw digitally on a tablet. So it's like you're drawing on glass. So it's incredibly slick. So when I started painting seriously, I wanted the opposite. I wanted texture. I wanted to hear my pencil scrape across the paper. I wanted to feel that kind of the impurities of everything. So I'm more drawn to cold press paper.
May I ask what kind of tape you are using?
You can, and you'll be very disappointed to know that this is just bog standard masking tape from the hardware store. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I don't know whose ears that hurts, but I apologize. I had some other fancy stuff that I was using for a while, and I don't know. This is what I have in the drawer. So, but it works well. And I sometimes just pick up some lint off my pants, so it's not quite as tacky, so it's not going to tear my paper.
Do you paint on incline, Alex? Or do you paint?
Yeah, I do. I'm just resting. I just taped this to a board and I'm just resting it on a pencil case. So it's at a slight angle. That's sort of so I can see the paper at a better perspective more than anything. And I like to keep it on sort of a loose thing that I can pick up and tilt around if I need paint to kind of splash around at all. All right, let's, so this is a cafe. I did the pencil sketch already. I'm just gonna add a little bit of water on here. And then I think I'm just gonna dive in with this raw sienna. I'll just get a little bit in my palette, a little bit on my brush, and just kind of brush it on here pretty lightly. Pay attention to my reference photo. I just want to kind of carve around this awning a little bit. The left side of this image is really in deep shadow, so I can, well, I say deep shadow, it's actually reflecting quite a bit of the building opposite. I think while I'm here, I'm going to do a little bit of the street, just in a very a very pale gray. And for that, I'm going to mix ultramarine and burnt sienna. These are right out of the tube, so they're really juicy. This is way too-
Alex, are you working from a reference photo or memory?
I have a reference photo in front of me.
Alex,
Yes.
is it the photo, the reference? Is it an actual printout or is it on a digital?
It's on an iPad. It's on an iPad in front of me.
Do you find that helps you or hinders you in any way, color-wise?
No, I find the iPad is a pretty good representation, and it also is easy because I can pinch and zoom in if I want.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it makes it pretty easy to use. If I don't have the best printer, and so if I print something out, you know, sometimes that's worse quality and it's harder to kind of see the vibrancy of things. While I'm here, I just want to, there's this crosswalk here, so I want to get that.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Can you either show us the reference photo that you're using, or is it a splash or something that you can send us the link to?
I can show it to you. This is it here.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. So the actual color of the awning in the photo and in real life is more of a kind of a dusty, almost a maroon. But I'm gonna make it nice and vibrant. I'm gonna make it really, really pop a nice red.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm one of those visual people. You can explain something all you want, but I have to see it.
I hear you. I'm the same way. You know, if somebody asks me for directions somewhere, I say, I can draw you a map, but I couldn't tell you the first thing about how to get somewhere.
Here's your funny. I live out in the country. And many years ago, when I moved from the city out to the country, and I was told to go to this guy's house, they said, okay, you go down here, take the first right, and then you're going to take the first left. And when you see the cow with this tree that looks like, yeah, then I knew I was in trouble.
Yep.
May I ask you
Alex?
what two reds you mixed together?
Which what?
Which two reds are you mixing together?
I am mixing, this is Pyrrole Scarlet, and this is a quinacridone red.
Quinacridone rose, maybe?
Okay, thank you.
Quinacridone red.
You do have
but-
quinacridone red in the
Yeah.
list.
But most of this awning, I think I just want to use this Pyrrole Scarlet. It's such a brilliant kind of fire truck. You know, it's just a great energetic color.
Alex,
Yes.
when you have such a big burst of strong color like that, is it important to mix it up a little bit so it's not just one gigantic block that takes over the painting?
Yes, it can be. I like to push in a little bit of water. I'll do that now, actually, especially right where the sun is hitting. just to build in a little bit of variety. So yeah, you're right. It's not kind of this solid mass of color, but I am extending this red all the way down to the pavement where this shadow is, and you'll see why in a minute. This will become kind of an underpainting. I can mess that up a little bit. And actually this can come on up here. This I love.
Something you like to do, color into connection.
Exactly. Yeah, and I find that by pulling that red all the way down as kind of an undercoat, and then later when it's dry, I'll go in and I'll put some deep shadows on top of that. And you feel the red through the shadows because of everything, everything's kind of transparent.
But it's quite interesting rather than like a block of color.
Exactly, it's sort of this glazing technique that's much more dynamic.
I've got one more question for you, Alex.
Alrighty.
More of a personal thing, this. In my thought of going to Paris, maybe sometime next year, I've realized I don't know how to order cod and chips. How would you say that?
Well, there are a couple, it's a very English dish. It's not a very standard Parisian French dish. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to set you up for disappointment. But there are some English pubs and Irish pubs that will do pretty good fish and chips for you.
I got pommes frites, but that were about as far as I got.
Could you share with us a little bit about the brushes that you prefer to use?
Yeah, I'm using some Escoda brushes this evening or today. This is a Reserva, and I've rubbed off the the size, so I can't tell you exactly what it is. But these are a couple Reserva brushes, which is a natural fiber brush. I've got a little bit later. I'll be using this, which is a Perla 1/4-inch dagger brush. That's really nice. For kind of feathering some of these edges. This I found recently. It's actually made by Arches, which I didn't know they made brushes, but it's a pretty gorgeous natural fiber again. And I've got the first thing I used was this big flat Rubloff, which is a synthetic brush. I've got a million brushes just within reach, and I'll try to call them out as I get them. Let's see, what do I want to do? This is kind of working nicely, I think. I want to just mess up some of these edges a little bit more, so that's not. I might want to. All right.
Alex, I'm looking at your dot color. I don't see any gray colors in there, but I'm looking at your palette and it looks like you might have some neutral tints or some other grays.
I up here, yeah, I don't have any neutral tint, but up here I've got, this is kind of my dark corner. This is an ivory black. This is a shadow violet. I think this is a graphite gray. And I forget what the others are. I don't have them in front of me, but I've recently sort of added those into the mix. If I want something, probably a hematite genuine. So, if I want something really kind of dark and actually I might use some of the shadow violet in a little bit. I think.
So you like you like to use granulated colors.
Well, I do. I like to use them. It depends on the subject and it depends on the part of the painting. But a lot of the textures of these old buildings, they've got such an interesting patina, you know, because this stonework is so old and there's just a lot of history that I feel that the granulation helps me. You know, I don't need to paint every detail. I can let the paint do a lot of the work for me. So that's where I love the granulation comes in. If I'm doing a sky or kind of a water, I might want something that's not granulating because I want a different effect. But yeah, those are super fun to play with. I think I just
I like
want
the way you think.
Sorry?
I like the way you think.
Thank you. I'm just going to hit this with a hairdryer real quick. So I don't know if somebody wants to mute me if I don't.
We have a follow-up question on Facebook asking if you also use lunar black.
Lunar black.
Yes, I think one of these might be a lunar black. So yes. Somewhere I swatched all these out and I couldn't find it today. So yeah. All right, that might be enough of that. I want to go ahead and get into some of these shadows because that's where this piece will really kind of take off. And I think I want to come back to this mixture of my ultramarine and burnt sienna. I'm gonna use, this is another flat brush. This is a Raphael Soft Aqua. It's imitation squirrel, so it's a synthetic. And I just want to liven this up a little bit, maybe put in a little bit more blue in there, ultramarine, just to cool that down. And I'm gonna touch it with some quinacridone red to tip it a little bit lavender. That's too much, so I'm gonna come back with some burnt sienna. That feels pretty good. And this, I can just do this, this shadow of this building here. So this is this cool shadow that actually this is all in shadow. So I'm going to paint over that kind of warm color.
Alex?
Yes.
You know, you mentioned obviously, generally with buildings, you have a side that's light and the side that's dark.
Yes.
To create three-dimensional space. But you mentioned about light reflecting from other buildings and other environments. How do you deal with that if it's on the dark side of the and it kind of counterbalances it?
Yeah, well, I'll show you this. This is kind of, the sun is coming from the upper right in this image. So this is going to be bright, warm sunlight. So I'm going to leave that as my raw sienna. This face, it doesn't make a sharp, like 90-degree corner. It sort of has this flat plane that's facing us, and then it tips away on this left side. So this face is actually the darkest face. So I can make this pretty, I can go pretty heavy with this sort of lavender shadow color on that face. This face is a little bit lighter. So I can use the same kind of mixture, but I can just sort of water it down. And you can do a lot by just kind of varying the amount of water you have on there, so that, you know, it's a nice dark defining shadow line here. I'm even gonna push in more cool shadow right on that edge to really, really define that a lot more. And then as it kind of goes around this corner, it gets lighter. This actually, there's a nice, some sort of shadows going on here. So just by varying, this is the same mix of colors, there's just more pigment here than there is here. And so it starts to feel like this is, there's some reflected light that's bouncing off a building that's just out of frame. I will, you know, I'm gonna keep, while I've got this mixture of my ultramarine, burnt sienna, quinacridone red, I'm just gonna carry on the right-hand side of this image. And this, I can just kind of paint in these shadows. There's different balconies, there's different kind of awnings happening, not awnings, sorry, like cornices happening. There's a lot of window details, but this is, you know, my center of focus is down here on the cafe. So this, I can really afford to get away with not a lot of detail. You know, that can sort of drift off into the distance a little bit. And even up here, the higher up the building I get, we can still see that, yeah. I can even sort of dab it with a paper towel if I feel like it's a little too heavy. You just have a few details, but really, really not a lot. You know, your eye is going to fill in these gaps and kind of read it as what we want it to be, which is this, you know, this, a lot of interesting stonework, a lot of interesting window details. I'm just gonna push in a little bit of quinacridone sienna. I'm not even, am I cheating? Can I use colors that aren't on my dot card?
Of course you can. Oh, no.
I love this effect of sort of painting in cool shadows and then just pushing in this warm, this is what I'm using. It's quinacridone sienna. It's a very vibrant orange. But if you water it down enough, you could just put it right under that lip of those sort of balconies, and it just gives it this dimensionality that's super interesting.
Alex.
Yes.
As you're doing there, fading it out to the outer edge of the image, have you ever tried fading it out into a pencil sketch?
I have done that, yes. If my angle were slightly different and I was looking a lot further down the street, it really would fade into nothing. And so then I would probably do exactly that. Yeah. This it's kind of nice to have, you know, this much sort of going on over here.
And we have a question on Facebook from Sarah asking, as a left-hander, is there anything different you do with your palette setup?
With the palette setup, you know, it just has to make sense to you. You know, I learned when I first started doing kind of larger illustrations, I was doing these big charcoal drawings. This was pre-digital. And I found that I had to cover my page from the upper right-hand corner down to the lower left-hand corner. So I would avoid smudging everything. So I would just I would start up here and I would carry on and finish an image down here because charcoal was so messy. For the palette arrangement, I don't know, I sort of have whatever I reach for the most, I think I want closest to me. I haven't really, I've thought a lot about being left-handed and what that means and how I can use a fountain pen being a lefty, which is a challenge, but I haven't thought too much about the actual arrangement of the colors in my palette. It feels like it's sort of, I mean, this is how I've got mine arranged. It's not a huge space, so I don't, I mean, maybe. I mean, these are kind of the colors I use the most, so they're going to be the closest to me. These are sort of the ones I use the least, so maybe they're further away. So yeah, maybe that's my answer.
Alex, on a similar subject, have you ever heard of a technique called the English technique?
I don't know if I have. I don't know what that is.
It's where you use both hands.
I will use both hands if I'm in a tricky spot and I need to, if I wanted to kind of come in and sort of do some detail over here on this edge, and I'll use my right hand for that. But I don't know, using both at the same time might tax my brain a little too much.
Yeah. My right hand's okay, but my left hand's a bit artistically dyslexic. So it just doesn't do what I want it to do.
If you're just doing kind of mirror image things, I could do that. That's no problem. But like if I needed to be a brain surgeon and really get in there and do things like that might cause problems. Okay, so I'm gonna, this is starting to feel, I'm starting to kind of feel the form of this building a little bit. I think I want to go even darker with some shadow colors. I think I want to get a little bit more blue into there. I want to get some cobalt. Oops, last time I did this, I was painting outside in a garden, so there's some green in my cobalt. That's okay. I just want to make this even more blue on this face, just so you feel that.
Are you making decisions at this moment in time about what are going to be the darkest areas of your painting?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, based on my reference photo, the darkest areas are right under this awning, right in that restaurant. So those I'll probably do last, and I'll add, I might use my shadow violet. I might use the same sort of ultramarine burnt sienna, just get it really, really creamy and thick. And that can get me pretty dark under here, which is nice. But I think next I'm gonna reach for, what is this dark red? It is Deep Scarlet, which I came across about a year ago, and it's such the perfect shadow color for red. It's this, which is this deep kind of blood red. It makes a really nice shadow color on the awning itself. And if I get just a touch of ultramarine in there, it gets even darker. So I can get that, and I can come in and there's just a little lip here. And then there is this great, oops, I already put my hand in there. The shadow just kind of scrapes across here in a really nice way. So it's these shadows that really start to tell you that this is this three-dimensional space. Oh, actually, I just cleaned out my brush, but I didn't need to. I can do this kind of this lower lip hanging here.
Alex,
Yes.
are you a person who likes to leave all the muddy grey stuff on your palette to use for another occasion?
No, I'm much more anal about it. I really like to clean it up and keep everything tidy and wipe it
Absolutely
down.
fresh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like things get muddy if I don't do that. So yeah. All right, so that's that. And while I'm here, let me see, what do I have? How are we doing on time? I can already tell I'm not going to finish this in the time we have, but I'm going to just come in under this awning with some a dark color, and that will help sort of define things. And then the rest is kind of, sort of details. But I think for now, I'm really going to get a deep mix going. Whoops, sorry. And I'm just gonna mix, like I said, this is that ultramarine and burnt sienna. You can see it's really, I mean, it's a very dark blue. You can get pretty close to black by doing this. And it's going over red. So let's see what that is gonna do for us. I just wanna, I'll kind of come in here, get around some of these figures. Oh, it's still wet, so it's bleeding up into things. That's okay. I'm just kind of carving around. There's these figures that I'll add some details to later, but because they're kind of in the sunlight, so some sunlight is hitting their shoulders and the tops of their heads. So I want to preserve that white of the page for that. Everything else though can go pretty dark under here. And while I'm here, let's see if I can, oh, good. I'm just scraping, I'm using this plastic carving tool as a scraper just to scrape into that damp paint because there's some railings, there's a metro stop here, and so there's some banister railings and some other details that I want to highlight.
Alex,
yeah.
For things like signage, which is all over the place, isn't it? Do you ever mask anything off or put resist over it so it's protected?
I don't, but well, I'll tell you what I do because I don't know if I'll have a chance to actually demonstrate it, but I will often when the whole piece is dry, I will get an X-Acto knife and scrape
Okay.
scrape in. There's some lights underneath this awning that I'll probably use that for. And then this dark shadow, let's see, I've got these great figures here, so I'll give them some nice cast shadows while I'm here. So now it looks like these sort of ghostly figures are hanging out. And I'll keep, this shadow just comes right across the street here. I'll blend that up. So under this kind of first floor balcony, that's dry now, so I can throw in a few little details with this darker kind of shadow color, which is nice. There's some windows. I could just put those in. So by adding these darker details, you really start to feel the light on here, the sunlight. I can already tell I didn't make this shadow dark enough. When it was going on, it felt really heavy, but as it dries, I can already tell it's not quite enough. So I can come in and do a little bit more.
In our time together, we often talk about value, and the word isn't correct to say verses, but value and color. Maybe I'll ask my question here. Can you talk a little bit about your color theory and your progression of your color theory?
Yes, yeah, I can't remember if I was talking about this a little bit last night during the swatching session, but I think because I come from this background of illustration, I spent so many years drawing in black and white. And so I feel like I've got a really strong sense of composition, a really strong sense of sort of lights and shadows. But for a long, long time, I really felt like color was a bit of a foreign language to me. And I feel like, I'm lucky to be in Paris for a lot of reasons, but one of them is that Paris has a pretty limited color palette. So I could do a black and white sketch and I could add one color. I could add bright red for an awning and it would be this pretty vibrant piece. So I start, that was my baby steps. I would start to slowly introduce color into my work. Finding kind of this raw sienna was a challenge. If there's trees with some greenery, that's a challenge. But I felt like I would sort of add these elements kind of one at a time. Really over the last maybe 3 years, I've really just dove in deep and thought, you know what, the color that I see with my eye, I don't need to perfectly imitate that or replicate that. It's, I'm not in the imitation business. I think I'm in the translation business. And so I could translate these colors to have it be more of what I feel or what I want to sort of convey in a painting. So if I want something to feel very warm and summery and inviting, maybe I'll use these kind of lavender shadows that are a little bit, I don't see those in the reference photo. Everything's kind of a version of gray. Or if it's in the winter, it might feel colder. I might lean more on my ultramarine or my cobalt. I don't know if this is answering your question, but this is kind of how I think about these things.
Alex, what is your plan for the top left corner?
Good question. I'm going to keep that as vague as possible. I just want to add some windows here. You know, there are a few windows and they're kind of reflecting the sky. They're reflecting the building opposite. So I can just, you know, drag my brush like this, as long as they're in kind of the right place. They're sort of lining up over these archways. That is sort of enough. Again, this is, you know, my center focus is down here. I'm going to keep piling details down here. Everything on the periphery can be much less defined. I'll do more than this. You know, there's some details with, you know, kind of different stonework and things going on, but I don't need to really go nuts with a lot of details over there. In fact, the more I add up here and the more I add up here will detract from this. I think, oh, look at that, we're already, I'm gonna, as kind of a final for this bit, I just want to add a shadow in the lower right corner here. And this will be kind of a cast shadow from the building opposite. And I can do this very cold, dark shadow.
While you're painting, I'm going to read 2 comments from Facebook. Stella Canfield is commenting, Alex, I love how you move around the painting, connecting the shapes. Enjoy very much watching you in action. And Susan Little comments, I enjoy the way the red shows through the building color, through the shadow color on the buildings. And then Sandy's just commented now, I enjoy watching how you incorporate each color. Right now it's the blue, cobalt blue.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's I've been doing this more and more, you know, to really kind of extend that red down further than you would ever think. So that first stage is really, looks very traumatic. It can be very scary. But when you go back and add that those shadows over it, it just gives this warmth to the shadows that I don't know how I would do it any other way. You know, it just, you feel that, you feel the red through the shadows. It just warms everything up in a really interesting way. How are we doing? Are we got a couple minutes?
About 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna keep, even when the cameras are off, I'll keep working on this because there's a lot of sort of banister railings. You know, there is some signage. There's a big traffic light here with a metro sign. These figures want to have a little bit more detail, but this is kind of, you know, I think we're off to a good start here. I've got some nice, you feel this strong sunlight, you feel these cool shadows, this bright red that's sort of reflecting up into the building to give this this illusion of dimensionality.
It's wonderful how that comes together. You make it look flawless.
Another question for Alex.
Yes.
Since you're going to keep working on this, and thrilled that you are, by the way, will you, when you're finished, post a picture to the Daniel Smith website, or you can email it? Anyway, make that work.
Yeah.
And
Now
your Instagram also?
I absolutely will. I'll take a few photos, you know, at this stage, and then definitely post the results when I'm done. I feel like you've all spent some time, so we're all invested in this one now. So I can't.
I enjoy seeing kind of like a section by section breakdown. I'm doing this because of this. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That logic, how's that?
Yeah, yeah. Good, good.
Alex,
Yes.
we've not yet asked the standard question we ask all our guests.
Uh-oh.
When do you know when you're finished?
Yeah, this is the question, right? That is the $1 million question, and we are out of time. So
The
No,
answer
I
to that
don't-
is on the blog.
yeah. I do, I mean, my kind of poetic answer is the painting is done when it sings on its own. I really, I feel like these things have a life of their own, and this is kind of a dialogue that we're having as we go, and we're sort of birthing this thing, and when it can stand on its own 2 feet and it doesn't need me anymore, then it's done. Listening to that's the hard part. Kind of recognizing that little voice. That's the hard part.
Awesome.
Thank you.
It's been wonderful to watch you today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, well, thank you. This went way too quickly, but it's a real pleasure to share with everyone. So thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining today, Friday. Alex, thank you again. It's been fantastic watching you make something just come to life so beautifully. I wish you all a great weekend and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Alex.